Order, order, honorable members. Does any member wish to move a motion without notice? Honorable Magweb.
Thank you, Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to express our sincere condolences on the passing of the Queen of the Soul, Aretha Louise Franklin, who died at the age of 76 last Thursday, 16 August 2018 in Detroit, Michigan. She will forever be remembered for her incredible voice and significant contribution to the music industry. A strong woman with an independent spirit, Franklin was embraced and loved by those people from all different walks of life. No one will ever forget the sweet, soothing sounds. You make me feel like a woman. Respect. I never loved a man the way I love you. One of the most remarkable women who began to shatter that glass ceiling, making way for many others to follow. May her beautiful soul rest in peace, and she'll be forever be remembered, and the spirit will live on, and the songs will live on. I so move.
Thank you very much. Honorable Zwane.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I hereby move without notice that Council, one, notes with utmost appreciation the Women's Charter Review Conference, which was held in Parliament yesterday, 20th August, under the theme.
Honorable Zwane. What point are you
Chair, I
raising?
just want to make sure, are we with motions with notice or motions without notice?
Out.
Without, thank you.
Honorable Zwane, can you continue?
Thank you, Chair. Let me start all over again. I hereby move without notice that Council, one, notes with utmost appreciation the Women's Charter Review Conference that was held in Parliament yesterday, the 20th August, under the theme, Assessing Progress for Women since the adoption of the 1954 Women's Charter and the 1994 Women's Charter for Effective Equality. Two, Council further notes that the conference, which was attended by various gender activists and representatives from various civil society organizations across the country, served as a launching pad to engage women across all sectors of society on the most pertinent challenges still facing women today. Three, Council further notes that the inputs that were made at the conference is intended to culminate into an adoption of a conceptually relevant Women's Charter in March 2019. Four, Council takes this opportunity to congratulate the Deputy Chairperson of the Council, of the National Council of Provinces, the Deputy Speaker, and the Chairperson of the Women's Caucus for convening such an important engagement. And lastly, Council wishes to express appreciation to the various staff members under the leadership of the Acting Secretary of Parliament, Ms. Baby Tiawa, for making sure that the conference becomes a resounding success. I so move.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kaula.
Honorable Chairperson, thank you very much. I hereby move on behalf of Inkatha Freedom Party that the House notes that the state capture inquiry has finally commenced on Monday, 20th August 2018. Further notes that it is expected to last 24 months. Acknowledges the devastation state capture has wrought on the economy while bringing all SOEs to their knees, and register concern with the chairperson of the Commission's utterances that not many whistleblowers have come forward with information to assist the work of the Commission, and calls upon all South Africans who might have information on the state capture to submit information to the Commission so that it is able to do its work thoroughly and without fear or favor. And lastly, pledge support for the work of the Commission and express hope that all those who have fleeced the state of millions will be brought to book. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mateme.
Chairperson of the session, thank you very much. On behalf of the African National Congress, I hereby move without notice that the Council, 1, notes with utmost concern and apprehension reports that the economic freedom fighters are failing to protect women within the party as they continue to battle assault, violent, and sexual harassment by some leaders of the party. 2, further knows that in one incident, a Northwest Deputy Chairperson allegedly told a junior staff member during a confrontation in his office that he would have her genitals cut off, and that a second incident involves the party Limpopo secretary who was accused of physically assaulting a female member at a regional conference in 2016. 3, further notes with utmost apprehension and concern that the victims were not receiving any counseling from the party and totally ignored by the leadership of the party. Lastly, take this opportunity, Chair, to condemn in the strongest possible
Member, your time has
terms
expired.
any form of violence or harassment against women,
Honorable
especially by people who use their
Honorable
positions
Matera,
and
your time has
influence
expired.
to wage.
Your time has expired, Honorable Mateme. Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move without notice that this Council notes with utmost appreciation the arrest of the 6th last suspect in the 2017 murder case of actor Kauting Dumsani Masilela. Further notes that Mr. Masilela was shot dead a year ago during a hijacking in Tabasa in South Africa and a blotched hijacking. Takes this opportunity to congratulate the police for working tirelessly to bring the 6th suspect to justice. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honorable Julius.
I like the frivolous motions, Chairperson, Deputy Chair.
Okay.
It was Honorable Singh's maiden motion in 4.5 years.
I didn't hear that.
That's on a lighter note, Chairperson.
I didn't hear that lighter note. Must
On
be
behalf of the
first.
Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move without notice that this House, number 1, congratulate Solim Simanga on his selection as DA Gauteng Premier candidate for the 2019 national elections. Further note that Soli represents a new generation of DA leaders who are young, charismatic, articulate, competent, and wholeheartedly committed to improving the lives of South Africans. Under DA Premier candidate Msimanga, the Gauteng people will now have an opportunity to vote for a party with a track record of caring for the people, creating jobs, and stopping at nothing to halt the scourge of corruption. And lastly, Solim Simanga understands that the only way to truly get rid of corruption is to change the government. He will ask people countrywide to vote for the DA in 2019. I so move.
Thank you very much. Order. Honorable Isaac.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion without notice that this House notes the appointment of Mark Kingon as Acting Commissioner of SARS, a vital and key institution of the state. Of course, we are more than happy to see the now dubious Tom Moyane having been fired. Great news. Further notes that the looting of state resources has had huge ramifications at SARS, as well as our country on the whole. Levels of public trust and credibility of an institution that was once a global leading institution now remain very low. And further notes that in this financial year, Chairperson, SARS has to collect a target of some 1.345 trillion rand. And I quote in conclusion, Mr. Kingon, "To rebuild trust is a long and hard road, but it must be done if we are going to resolve the issue and regain the confidence both in this country and globally. We wish our new Acting Commissioner of SARS every success in this mammoth task. I so move. Thank you."
Thank you very much. Honorable Mokwele.
Ke a leboga modulasetulo ke ema yana ke emetse mokgatlo wa Economic Freedom Fighters to note for the House to note that most of the students who participated in the Fees Must Fall protest are being persecuted and are jailed. Further note that the protest was solemnly for the free and decolonized education for all South Africans. And those students that are charged and those that are already in jail with an intent of the government to silence them, I call upon the President of the country to stand firm and pardon all the students that have been found guilty by the court of law and those ones that have been charged with the Public Violence Act that the President pardoned them. I so move.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, let me bring it to your attention that I've got a list of about... Yes?
My apologies, man. I noticed that you didn't ask whether members agree or disagree with all the motions today.
We're dealing with notices. Notices of motions. Now we are... Hence, I wanted to bring to your attention that because of the pressure of time...
You started by saying
notice.
Without notice.
No,
That's
no, no.
why, Honorable Mark, we all did without notice, Chair.
No, no, no.
Just check.
That what I've been listening to you as well. You didn't present notices without, no, motions without. You presented notices of motions.
No.
Without.
Yes. Yes.
Let's start again.
Okay. Because, you know, at least there's somebody who was listening to me. Because Honorable Labuskaghni stood up and asked whether if it is without or with notices. And I said, notices. And proceed. Okay. No. We'll have to see how then best we can deal with it. If members were under the impression that we're presenting notices, motions without notices, because we didn't observe whether if there are objections or acceptance of the notices. Yes, that's one part that we can deal with. They would become notices. Because now we'll be pressured by time. We'll be pressured by time. All right. Can I proceed in the following way? The House is of the view that they presented notices without, motions without notices. Okay? Can we therefore proceed in the following way? We don't resolve it now. And then in the next sitting, we can go back to those motions based on what Hansard would have presented then to us. And then I would present it to the House for objections, each one of them. Each one of them. Because it will only be procedurally correct to do that than to say, no, we turn them into notices. It would be unfair. So, honorable members, Honorable Mokoele, I'm trying to get a solution to the problem. I thought I'm getting a solution to the problem, because to reverse and to change, it will therefore be unfair. No, we can't debate this, Honorable Mokoele. There was a misunderstanding, and in communication there can always be a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation of anything. And I don't know why would we have to make a debate around this particular matter. And I'm trying to say, I'm saying, in the next sitting, they are there. Hansard is there. Hansard is there. In the next sitting, I'll be there. I'll be presiding over that. And I'll be able to call members' names based on the motions that they had presented, and therefore call on objections or not. Can we proceed with that, honorable members? Thank you very much. Therefore, can we then, yes, Thursday, this Thursday. Honorable Mokoele.
Thank you, Chair. Some of us won't be here on Thursday. I'm not speaking to you. If you want me to speak to you, I will address you.
Okay, Honorable
So
Mokoele,
for now,
can
I'm
you address
addressing
me?
the chair.
Can you address me, please?
Please, I must be respected. I'm saying to you, Chair, on a part of the economic freedom fighters, because some of us as the EFF won't be here on Thursday. I'm appealing to you, I'm just requesting you that our motion is a notice of a motion. So if ever you are going to call us by names like that, it must be recorded as such.
Thank you very much.
So you see, I was assisting you to take a decision. So don't.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yours is a notice. Now we're dealing with notices now. Now, no, honorable members, the area, no, listen, not unless members are not listening. We were under, from where I'm seated, we're dealing with notices, isn't it so? And you were under the impression that you were dealing with motions without notice. Now, as part and parcel of getting a solution is to say that on Thursday, we would then read out the names of the notices that were presented without, okay? And then we'll ask for an objection or an acceptance of the motion. You don't have to be there. You don't have to be there. You have already presented the motion, okay? Now, we are dealing with notices of motions. Honorable Labuskaghni.
I understand your ruling in a way, although I don't understand how anybody in this House can understand that a notice of a motion could be on the death of Aretha Franklin, because we can't debate it. But in any case, that was the first motion. My question now is, if we're going to the notice of a motion now, when are we going to finish the other motions without notice? My proposal is, can't we finish the motions without notice and then deal with the notice of a motion? Thank you.
You know why I raised the issue. It is a progressive suggestion, but unfortunately, it does not allow us in terms of time. It doesn't allow us. You must remember that your rule says that 20 minutes for motions. That is with and without. Now, we already have the hour. Yes, I gave you that extra 5 minutes. We started at 5 past. That's why I gave the extra 5 minutes. Honorable Mokoele, can you be the last one on this item?
Ka boikokobetso fela, ke nagana gore ga motho a baya motion mo tafoleng, if o tlhoka gore motion o debate o tla bua gore motion o tlhoka go debate-iwa. So ga motion wa Rita Franklin, ba choositse gore ba o beye gore o ka se debate-iwe, it's obvious. So let it be that it's a motion that won't be debated in the House. So it will depend on an individual member whether his or her motion of notice of a motion needs to be debated by the House or not.
That was a notice in any case. Honorable members, can I take 5 minutes for you to present your notices of motions? And then we proceed with the business of today. Okay. Honorable Engelbrecht.
Chairperson, I have a motion without notice. Without notice.
No. We have dealt with.
No, I
without
wasn't able to read mine, Chair, so I want
Come
to
again?
read mine. I didn't have the opportunity to read mine, so I want to read it now.
Because the time
please.
was up.
No, Chair, you were confused and you were
No,
using
no,
up our time.
No, Honorable Engelbrecht, just take a seat, please. Take a
Chairperson,
seat.
you got to let
No,
me read
can
my
I
motion without
address
a
you on that?
notice.
Can I address you on that? I don't know why do we deliberately, on order, honorable members, I don't know why do you deliberately create a problem where there's no problem. Because, look, honorable member, let me address you on this matter. It is my responsibility, in the first place, to ensure that at the most, all political parties to have an opportunity to present their motions. It is my responsibility to do that. And then guided by time, I would therefore allow other members also to then further. And therefore, I cannot understand, not everybody will have an opportunity to present their motions. Not everybody. So we are dealing with notices now. Is that a notice or without?
Chair,
It's a
a
notice
motion
of
with
a motion.
notice.
It's the notice of a motion.
Yes.
Okay.
Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a motion that this House acknowledges the role that the DA-led City of Johannesburg has achieved in providing title deeds to over 500 homeowners in the community of Lutherring, Johannesburg. That this House congratulates and debates that the DA-led City of Johannesburg is dedicating its administration to speeding up the delivery of title deeds and making this a top priority as part of deliverables to the citizens of Johannesburg. And that we debate that it is an honor to give the elderly their title deeds and through it a dignity that they have been deprived of for such a long time. That they can now sleep with less anxiety knowing that they are the rightful owners of their own homes. I so move.
No, it's a notice of a motion. It's a notice, we are dealing with notices of motions. No. It's a notice of a motion. Honorable Julius. No. Honorable Mokwele. Honorable Mokwele, can you please take your seat? No. Can you please take your seat? Let's proceed with the business. No, honorable member, I made it clear to the member that whatever that he's reading is a notice of a motion. How it is crafted, how the content is, it is a notice. According to the records, it would read as a notice of a motion. Honorable. Thank you very much. Yes, Honorable.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House in its next sitting debates lack of accountability and monitoring by Department of Water and Sanitation that leads to substandard quality of bulk infrastructure. The House should also debate how the National Treasury is able to take action against inferior work and corruption with reference to bulk infrastructure to retrieve some of the monies lost in this regard. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Which other member was there? Which will be the last one? Oh, Honorable Julius.
Dankie,
take the
achtbare
last one.
ondervoorzitter. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move that at the next sitting, the House debates the effects of drug abuse on the South African society and how government should intervene to end the scourge of drug abuse in South Africa. I so move.
Thank you very much. You'll be the last. Sir.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby wish to move a notice of a motion that this House debates the unprecedented high number of rape cases reported to the police over the last few months, and that this House requests the Minister of Police and other responsible departments to engage and formulate a turnaround strategy to manage this crisis and to ensure a safer environment for our women and children. I so move. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the motions. Let me take the opportunity as well to welcome all special delegates from our respective provinces who are with us today. And of course, express our appreciation of the fact that you are taking keen interest in the National Council of Provinces. The next thing that I will be dealing with, honorable members, is a ruling of the 15th on a point of order raised by Honorable Smith. Honorable members, I would like to make a ruling on a point of order raised on the 15th of August 2018 during the oral question session to the Minister in the Presidency for Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. Honorable Smith rose on a point of order and said the following. Chairperson, on a point of order, the Minister just now that the precursor and the following party of the National Party is the DA. And that was mentioned before in this House, and therefore was a ruling, and there was a ruling about that, which is clearly false. It is deliberately misleading because the DA comes from the DP, and the DP comes from the PFP, and the PFP does not come from the National Party, close quote. I then undertook to consult Hansard and return to the House later with a ruling. Having consulted Hansard, in the course of her speech, the Honorable Minister is recorded to have said, and I quote, Honorable Chair, I will answer the question, but I'm going to start where they ended. I want to say that the history of this country is known since 1652. If your library says otherwise, then it must be corrected. Secondly, the precursor of the party that ruled during apartheid is known, and the successor party is the Democratic Alliance. If you are a successor party or successor state, you take both assets and liabilities of that party, close quote. The issue in question is whether the statement by the minister deliberately misled the House. Section 71 of the Constitution, read with the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act and Council Rule 30, affords members of the Council and Cabinet members the right to freedom of speech in this chamber. This recognizes that members should be free to speak their minds in debates without fear or favor. This right is at the heart of privileges of Parliament, which are an integral part of our constitutional arrangements. However, in exercising this right, I would expect that everyone in this House would always be prudent in their tone and choice of words. One of our roles as presiding officers is to create a space that allows members during debates to express themselves, probe others, and listen to the others. Every member in this House has the right to hold his or her own views and the right to express those views in this chamber. To make a point of order out of every heated exchange in this robust House would make the proceedings unworkable. As previously ruled in this House, the officers presiding cannot be expected to adjudicate on the accuracy or otherwise of every statement, as this would lead to endless disputes of facts. A deliberate misleading of the House involves an intent to mislead or acknowledge or knowledge that the statement will be misleading. It would be virtually impossible to prove that a member deliberately misled the House. Members must be allowed to present different interpretations of debates or events in this political House. However, we will never allow remarks directed specifically at another member that questions the member's integrity, honesty, and character. Therefore, my ruling is that the point of order raised by Honorable Smith cannot be upheld. Thank you very much. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of Labour Laws Amendment Bill, Bill 29 of 2017, and report of Select Committee on Economic and Business Development thereon.
Honorable Khai.
Honorable House Deputy Chairperson, honorable members, special delegates, Department of Labor, DDG, CCMA, workers and worker leaders in the gallery, good afternoon. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, on the 20th of February this year, we received a briefing from the member of the National Assembly, Honorable Dudley, who presented a private member's bill, which we then considered as the Select Committee. We then decided that we should include this bill together with other 3 bills so that we then advertise for submission by the public. We did that in May, and then we considered all the 4 bills. We received 2 submissions from the public, which we considered and deliberated on, and decided that we continued with the submission. And then the department then responded to those submissions. And therefore, I introduced this Labour Laws Amendment Bill, B29 of 2017, Section 75, for adoption by this House. This is a private member's bill, as I said, which was later redrafted by the Portfolio Committee on Labor. In the past, employees who did not qualify for maternity leave were only entitled to 3 days paid family responsibility leave for birth of employee's child, or if the employee's child was sick, or in the event of death of the employee's child. This bill, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, allows all fathers to be entitled to at least 10 days of paternity leave. Further, one adoptive parent who has adopted a child who is less than 2 years old will now be entitled to adoption leave. If there are 2 adoptive parents, one will be entitled to 10 consecutive weeks of adoption leave, and the other will be entitled to at least 10 days of paternity leave. The bill also paves the way for one surrogate parent to be entitled to the surrogacy leave for a period of up to 10 weeks, and the other parent will be entitled to at least 10 days of paternity leave. It should be noted that the leave will also be applicable in the event of miscarriage or a stillborn during the 3rd trimester, and fathers will be entitled to more family responsibility leave. We should also welcome, Deputy Chairperson, that the bill also provides for an increase in the maternity leave benefits. The bill allows payments of parental benefits and surrogate parental benefits from the UIF. The proposed labor law further prohibits bargaining council to reduce an employee's entitlement to paternity leave, adoption leave, or surrogacy leave. Chairperson, as I submit the bill to be adopted without amendment by this House, I wish to emphasize that this bill is recognizing the rights of the LGBTQI. We are truly an open democratic society. The committee therefore adopted this bill without any amendments, and I therefore table the report for consideration and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question, and the question is that the bill be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 63, I shall first allow political parties to make a declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any political party that wishes to make a declaration of vote? In the absence of any, then we shall proceed with the voting. I hope that our machines are working. Or what do you call the voting systems? Are they all working? They're not. Okay. There is, others are working, others are not. Honorable members, we do have an alternative to this, to raise our hands. Are you sure? All of us? Special delegates? Working. Fine. All those who vote in favor will vote in favor. All those who vote against will vote against, and all those who abstain or choose to abstain will then abstain. Permanent delegates, can you please assist your special delegates? We have done so. Okay, fine. The voting order, honorable members. Order. Voting is commenced. All members voted? Who said no? I'm putting the question again. Have all members voted? Fine, thank you very much. Can I get the results? Forty members voted in favor, 2 against, 0 abstention. Therefore, the majority of members voted in favor. Honorable members, in terms of honorable members, special delegate, you should be the most behaving. Most behaving. In terms of Section 675, we have proceeded, and therefore the majority of members have voted in favor. The bill is therefore agreed to in terms of Section 75 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the second order of the day. Secretary will read the second, third, and fourth orders of the day.
Consideration of Basic Condition of Employment Amendment Bill, Bill 30B of 2017. Consideration of National Minimum Wage Bill, Bill 31B of 2017. Consideration of Labor Relations Amendment Bill, Bill 32B of 2017, and reports of Select Committee on Economics and Business Development thereon.
Honorable Khai.
Thank you once again, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, and acknowledge also the presence of CCMA. Former President Jacob Zuma in his State of the Nation address on June 2014, announced that the then Deputy President, Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa, will convene a social partner dialogue under the ambit of NEDLAC on wage inequality and labor relations. At the NEDLAC summit on the 5th September 2014, His Excellency Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa announced the convening of labor relations in Indaba to initiate the NEDLAC engagement process. The Indaba was convened on the 4th November 2014. The key outcomes of the Indaba were the signing of the NEDLAC Ekurhuleni Declaration, the establishment of the Committee of Principal, the COP. It was agreed that the technical task team will be established to engage on the issues raised at the labor relations in Indaba, as set out in the Ekurhuleni Declaration. 2 task teams were established, namely the Labor Relation Task Team and the Wage Inequality Technical Task Team. The technical task teams reported to the COP, which is the Committee of Principals. After a 2-year engagement process, an agreement on national minimum wage was announced in February 2017 that inter alia, the national minimum wage will be set at 20 Rand per hour. The national minimum wage will come into effect then on the latest, the 1st of May 2018. But because of parliamentary processes, that could not happen. The agreement was part of the Labor Relations Stability Agreement package. The National Minimum Wage Bill is the legislative prescript intended to give effect to the agreement on the National Minimum Wage. The Basic Conditions of Employment Amendment Bill proposes amendments to the Basic Condition of Employment Act of 1997, consequent upon the enactment of the National Minimum Wage Act. Both bills were tabled at the NEDLAC on the 2nd June 2017, and the first sitting of the task team convened. The task team comprised of representatives from organized labor, organized business community, and government. After the concluding the deliberation, parties submitted report to the Minister of Labor in terms of Section 8 of the NEDLAC Act of 1994. The bills were submitted to Parliament on the 24th November 2014. The process that then was followed by the Select Committee on Economic and Business Development was the following. We had made it was referred to us by the National Assembly on the 29th of May. In anticipation of transmission of the bills from the National Assembly, the committee invited Department of Labor to brief it on the 20th February 2018. On the National Minimum Wage Bill, the aim of the National Minimum Wage Bill is to provide for a national minimum wage, to establish the National Minimum Wage Commission, to provide for the composition and functions of the National Minimum Wage Commission, to provide for the review and the annual adjustment of the national minimum wage, to provide for the exemption from paying the national minimum wage, and to provide for matters connected therewith. On Basic Conditions of Employment Amendment Bill, the aim of the bill is to amend the Basic Conditions of Employment Act of 1997 so as to substitute and insert certain definitions to provide for daily wage payment applicable to certain employees, to repeal certain provisions dealing with the sectoral determinations, and to de-establish the Employment Condition Commission, to extend the jurisdiction of the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, CCMA, to extend the provisions for monitoring and enforcement by the Labor Inspector, to include enforcement of the provisions of the National Minimum Wage Act 2018, the Unemployment Insurance Contribution Act of 2002, to provide for claims for underpayment, to provide for the transitional arrangements, to regulate sectoral determinations currently in force, to strengthen collective bargaining in respect of the sectors regulated by those sectoral determinations, and to provide for matters connected therewith. On Labor Relations Amendment Bill, the aim of the bill is to amend the Labor Relations Act of 1995 so as to provide criteria for the minister before the minister is compelled to extend the collective agreement as contemplated in the Act, to provide for the renewal and extension of funding agreements, to provide for picketing by collective agreement or by determination by the Commission in terms of picketing regulations, to provide for the classification of a ratified or determined minimum service, to extend the meaning of ballot to include any voting by members that is recorded secret, to provide for the independence of the register and deputy register, to provide for the advisory arbitration panel, to provide for advisory arbitration award, to provide for transitional provisions, and to provide for matters connected therewith. The committee, acting in accordance with its constitutional obligation to facilitate public participation, invited interested parties to submit comments on the bill. The committee advertised the bill on the 1st June 2018, inviting all interested stakeholders to submit written submission and to indicate whether they would like to make oral submissions to the committee. The committee receives 10 submissions prior to the closing date, as well as 2 additional submissions after the closing date. All the submissions were considered, and all submitters were invited to make oral submissions. 10 submitters availed themselves, and 2 declined. On the 27th June 2018, the Department of Labor responded to the submission received and responded to questions by members in respect thereof. On 7 August 2018, the committee deliberated on the contents of the bills and considered the issues raised in the public participation period and the department's response thereto. Having considered the matter, the committee agrees to adopt the bill without any amendments. On minority views, the following parties expressed their views, which were recorded as minority views. The Democratic Alliance indicated that while it supports the purport and object of the bill, it does not support the bill in its current form. This is on the national minimum wage. It is the view of the Democratic Alliance that, given the current economic climate, the bill may have the unintended consequence of negatively affecting small and medium businesses who cannot afford the national minimum wage. It is the view of the Democratic Alliance that the focus of the bill should have been on sectoral determinations and the introduction of national minimum wage in those sectors that could afford it, rather than have it applied generally, as it is currently the case. The Economic Freedom Fighters noted that whilst it supports the bill and agrees to the object of the bill, it does not support the proposed minimum wage of 20 Rand an hour, as this is too little and will not succeed in alleviating poverty. On the Labor Relations Amendment Bill with regard to the minority views, the Democratic Alliance does not support the bill and objects to the fact that the committee was not provided an opportunity to engage with the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, in respect of its submissions and oral presentation during the public hearing. Democratic Alliance is of the view that this stifled the public participation process. On basic conditions of employment bill, the Democratic Alliance object to the bill and noted it is concerned that the extension of jurisdiction afforded to the Department of Labor's inspection and enforcement unit will result in practical difficulties as they do not have the necessary resources and capacity to perform additional functions. In conclusion, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank all those who participated in ensuring the success of the lawmaking process, the interested parties of the public, parliamentary leadership, NCOP chairperson, House chairperson on committees, chief whip, who I had to update them from time to time on the status of the process. I also like to thank members of the Select Committee who also attended and participated of other committees, who participated in the deliberation, Honorable Dlamini, Honorable Zwane, Dr. Matime, Honorable Nita, Honorable Samka, Honorable Bagis, the staff, including the Legal Service Unit, Department of Labor, CCMA, Office of State Law Advisor, and the media. I hereby present the report for consideration and adoption. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ghai. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question, and the question is that the bills be agreed to. However, in accordance with the Rule 63, I shall first allow political parties to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any political party that wishes to do that, EFF?
Thank you, Chair. Today, we want the National Council of Provinces to record our dissatisfaction with the manner in which the ANC government has taken such an important policy only to turn into a tool for internal factional squabbles. The reason why SAFTU was refused access to input in NEDLEC is a reason enough to undermine the whole process of NEDLEC and the drafting of these bills, but also the idea that such an important policy that will affect the lives of millions of workers can be agreed upon by a group of elitists in NEDLEC and some panel appointed by one person who has demonstrated beyond doubt that he will at all times protect the interest of the big businesses before workers, poor people, women, children, and people with disability, is one we must completely reject. This bill were written with the interest of capital in mind and will do nothing to help the working poor of this country. Instead, they will further entrench the casualization of labor, weaken the ability of workers to organize, dismantle the right to strike which countless generations fought for, and legitimize a minimum wage which no person could live from in dignity, as the EFF will never support such reactionary anti-poor, anti-worker legislation. I so move.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I'll beg your indulgence. I'll I'll make 3 declarations, and as per the report, because it was covering 3 bills, but I will go through them in no particular.
Honorable Magwe, we are dealing with
one.
One.
Right. I'll focus to one then for now. Honorable Chairperson, indeed, the Democratic Alliance supports the spirit and the purport of this bill. However, we cannot support this bill in its current form. It is our view that given the economic climate, the bill may have unintended consequences of negatively affecting small and medium business enterprises. And therefore, this will negatively affect these businesses and that who cannot afford the minimum wage. It is our view, therefore, that the bill should have focused on sectoral determination and the introduction of the minimum wage in those sectors that could afford it, rather than its general application. And it is in those bases that the Democratic Alliance does not support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ANC. No. I had Honorable Pakis. The chair has presented the report. Now, I wanted to check whether if political parties wishes to make declaration of votes. The EFF did it, the DA did it. I saw the ANC's hand was up, but now is the ANC saying that they are not making any declaration? Okay, fine. We shall then proceed with the voting, honorable members. In accordance with Rule 63, I will check first whether if the systems, are they working? Okay, fine. If you are ready, then the voting shall commence. Have all members voted? Can I? Have all members voted? Honorable Mokwili, there's a question that I'm putting to the House. Whether if all members have voted. Not side comments that are irrelevant to the question. Have all members voted? Okay, fine. Can I get the results, please? There are 32 members in favor, 14 against. Therefore, the majority of members voted in favor of the bill. Therefore, the bill is agreed to by the House. I shall now put the question, honorable members order. I shall now put the question in respect of the third order. You see, if you don't listen and start engaging on other things, that's where we go wrong. I shall now put the question in respect of the third order. And in terms of Rule 63, I'll allow political parties to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any political party that wishes to? The Democratic Alliance?
Honorable Chairperson, thank you. Why are you sabotaging me now? Honorable Chairperson, the Democratic Alliance object to this bill because the extension of the jurisdiction afforded to the Department of Labor Inspection and Enforcement Unit, it is our view that it will result in practical and serious difficulties as they have in their own concession through the interaction with the Select Committee on Business and Economic Development, that they continue to lack capacity to enforce, the policies that they should be enforcing. And therefore, this will add an unnecessary burden on them, and therefore this additional function will prove to be very impractical, and this will be just a bill that will never be effective. Therefore, the DA on those bases, we do not support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other political party that wishes to? In the absence of any, then we shall proceed. I don't know if the chairperson, but you see the problem is that the chair presented the report, and the voting and procedure is that we are in actual fact reacting to your report that you presented to the House. We shall then proceed with the voting. The voting has commenced? Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Voting is closed. Can I get the results? Uh, 32 members voted in favor, 13 against, and 1 abstention. Therefore, in terms of section 75 of the Constitution, having received the majority of votes, therefore the bill is agreed to by this House. We shall now proceed to the voting on on the fourth. Yes, on the fourth order. Yes, Honorable Isaac.
Chairperson, I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't want to screw up the proceedings, but the honorable member is jumping up and down like as if something is not wrong, if something is not kosher. Can you assist the member? Either she leaves the house, relieves herself and come back or something, but...
No, I don't know. I don't know. Order, honorable members. Order. Matebul, you know, we had a very, very, very wonderful honorable Matebula last week. I don't know. I never said that. But Honorable Matebula is different today. The majority of members voted in favor, therefore the bill is agreed to in terms of section 75 of the Constitution. We shall now proceed in respect of the fourth question. Is there any, in terms of Rule 63, is there any political party that wishes to make a declaration of vote? Democratic Alliance?
Thank you once again, Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, members, the Democratic Alliance places on record that we do not support this bill because we hold the view that not all labor unions were provided adequate opportunity to make oral presentations during the public hearing phase. The Democratic Alliance is of the view that this stifled public participation process. Therefore, as the DA, we do not support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other political party? The African National Congress?
Thank you, Chairperson. The ANC has always operated on a basis of consulting as broadly as we possibly can. We have established the National Development and Labour Council. We have the greatest respect for all members of trade unions in this country.
The member is addressing. Don't interrupt the member. Even if you heckle, don't heckle to a point where you disrupt the member. Can we listen to the member? I want to hear what he says. Can you continue, Honorable Makue?
Thank you, Chairperson. As I said, the ANC has the greatest respect for all members of trade unions in this country. It is also, for us, not people out there, it is our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters who are the working class in this country, and we will propose that everybody should be supporting this legislation that is progressive to create a better life for the workers in this country. And therefore, the ANC, without apology, is fully behind all pieces of this legislation that will benefit the working class in this country. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. On what point are you rising, Honorable Julius?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Chair. I noticed that the honourable member read his declaration, or maybe from his head now, but he said, we reject all pieces of legislation and we are dealing one by one. Because you didn't prepare for motions, that's why you come with this for all, and we're dealing with one by one. Can the member withdraw and do his right motion, please? His declaration.
Honorable Julius, can I make a ruling, Honorable Chair? Honorable Julius, that is why I emphasized the fourth. Now, Honorable Makue, I can remember hearing all. Did you refer to all the three or just this one?
Chairperson, the ANC supports all legislation that benefits the working class of this country. And if this piece of legislation before us now is part of a package, we support that piece in as much as we support the entire package.
That is... Honorable members, order. Honorable Julius, order. Honorable members, House Chair, please manage the process there. Please. Honorable members, can we just be, so that we don't confuse ourselves. We don't get challenged tomorrow for things that are unnecessary. Honorable Makue, the fourth vote order. We are dealing with the fourth order. Not all, the fourth order. Does the African National Congress say that it supports the fourth order? Just for record purposes. We dealt with the second. We dealt with the third. Now we are dealing with the fourth order. Does the African National Congress?
Chairperson,
Yes.
the African National Conference.
Honorable members.
Can I finish?
Honorable members, order. Honorable Mukweli, I'm sure if you can go to the records of the previous houses or sittings, you would notice that there were less orders called. Can I ask Honorable Makue to be clear on dealing with the fourth order? Because I'll make a ruling, you'll leave me with no option but to make a ruling on the matter.
Okay. The ANC conference that was held in December last year mandated us. And therefore, Chair, the ANC is fully supportive of the fourth order.
Thank you very much.
But we are also supportive of the other three.
We shall, Honorable Mukweli, on what point are you rising?
Ne ke batla ho check-a le wena, Chair, gore is it permissible for you as the chair to give one member more than once to make declarations on one item? Is it permissible?
Can I respond?
Is permissible?
Can I take a seat?
A ke bue le wena wena. A ke bue le wena, you have sold the workers. Wena. O rekisitse babereki wena.
Honorable members, a question has been put. Honorable members, a question has been put to me, and my response is very simple and as follows. For purposes of clarity, and for record, it is my responsibility to make sure that whatever that this House agreed to is clarified and is clear to everybody. It doesn't matter how many times I ask a member. I didn't allow the member to make another declaration. I allowed a member to clarify himself on the order. So the honorable member clarified that he was speaking on the fourth order. Okay. Honorable members, can we proceed with the voting? Honorable members, voting has commenced. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Honorable members, I'm asking you now for the third time. Have all members voted? Okay, fine. Can I be provided with results? Thirty-two members voted in favor, 14 against, and 0 abstention. Therefore, the majority of members have voted in favor in terms of Section 75. I declare the bill be agreed to, or as agreed to by the House. Order, honorable members. We now come to the subject for discussion as printed on the order paper, and in doing so, let me welcome the Minister and Deputy Minister of Finance to the NCOP. On a point of order?
Chair, just before the voting was proceeded with, two members of the DA rose on 2 points of order. And they use, from where I'm standing, language that is denigrating on the decorum of this house. One, Honorable Isaac, who used the word bankroll. And two, Honorable Julius used the word focal. Can you please rule if that is parliamentary?
That one is a bit difficult for me because I didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. Was it on record?
Just to consult Hansard, Honorable Deputy Chair, and come with a ruling later.
No. It's going to be difficult. Mukwele, it's going to be difficult if it was not on record. Honorable members, if it was not on record, it's going to be difficult if the mic was not on. If it was said off, it's going to be difficult to check with Hansard. May I just ascertain with members, therefore, on the basis of that? Honorable Julius, did you say what you said? Can I make a ruling, please?
Chairperson, I swear I don't know where Imaswashi says. I didn't say that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know what he's getting at.
Honorable Tumunye, Honorable Julius says he didn't say that. Honorable Isaac, no. You can't withdraw on something that he denies. On what point are you raising, Honorable Member?
Chairperson, are we changing the rules in the NCP now? Can I wait 10 minutes and then stand up at the end of a plenary and raise something that happened previously and you will entertain it? Because the rules of the debate says you need to raise on the point of order. Many times in this chamber, while you were in the chair, when a minister was speaking or questions and somebody stand up on a point of order, when the person left that podium, you said you can't entertain the point of order. Now today, the honourable member raised 10 minutes after something happened and you entertain the point of order. I'm sorry, this is not convention in this house.
No, I take your point. Honorable Isaac?
Chairperson, with due respect to my colleague, I really don't understand what is he trying to imply. If I said something about not understanding bugger all, maybe I sounded out of context, but if bugger all is a big issue, I withdraw.
Don't justify.
I withdraw. I mean, really, I don't know what's the big deal.
Okay. Don't justify or try to explain. I take it that you say you didn't say it. Okay. No, that's fine then. Can you take your seat, Honorable Honorable Mateme? Can you introduce the bill?
Honorable Chairperson, Minister Nene, Deputy Minister Gungubele, special delegates, honorable members of this august house, ladies and gentlemen, lest we forget that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. Secondly, Chairperson, I would wish to remind ourselves that our inductive SONA in 2014 enjoined the Fifth Parliament to have a constructive opposition. Chair, just over 30 days ago, our nation joined the global community in celebrating the 100th anniversary of the birth of a fearless fighter and a remarkable leader of our people, none other than Tata Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Chair, we had the opportunity to recount Madiba's long walk to freedom, his wisdom, his unfailing humility, his abiding passion, his essential integrity, and the indelible legacy he left for our country. Honorable Deputy Chair, allow me to dedicate this speech to the memory of Tata Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela as we continue with our journey to the realization of his vision of a democratic, just, and equitable society. Chairperson, in his revered maiden Tumamina State of the Nation address, President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa gave a picture of the enormous challenges facing our state-owned enterprises. He highlighted in greater detail the enormous challenges that they are facing, which has impacted on the performance of the economy and placed pressure on the fiscus. Chairperson, he then committed our government to intervene decisively, to stabilize, revitalize them in order to ensure that they continue to fulfill their economic and developmental mandates. Chairperson, delivering his budget vote speech, the Minister of Public Enterprises, Minister Pravin Gordhan, highlighted 5 key pillars that will underpin the review of the state-owned enterprises. Pillar number 1, review current boards. Pillar number 2, improve efficiency. Pillar number 3, restore the state-owned enterprises' financial sustainability and reduce dependence on the fiscus. Pillar number 4, stamp out corrupt practices at the state-owned enterprises. Lastly, pillar number last, ensure that the state-owned enterprises' mandates are aligned to the state's developmental agenda. Chairperson, the Minister said this because for quite some time, many of our state-owned enterprises were faced with weak and inexperienced boards and management. In many instances, some of them were even negligent in executing their fiduciary responsibilities, suffering from poor performance, limited direction, and inaction or consequences against corruption. Consequence management was very weak, if there at all. Honorable Deputy Chair, I'm happy to highlight that in the last 6 months, the government has worked tirelessly to turn the tide in many of our state-owned enterprises. We have seen the review of current boards of directors of companies such as Eskom, Denel, Transnet, and the SA Express. Chairperson, government, through the stewardships of President Ramaphosa and Minister Gordhan, have put in place processes to review the boards of companies such as Safcol and Alexco. Chair, new Eskom CEO and COO were appointed. Many of these boards have been mandated to ensure that they appoint permanent executives urgently and ensure that all state-owned enterprises are not only financially viable, but also to make a meaningful contribution to our economy. Honorable Chairperson, for us, as the African National Congress, state-owned enterprises are an important pillar to achieve our economic policy objectives of transforming our country from apartheid to the new democratic society. Chairperson, our state-owned enterprises are not created to maximize profits or incur unnecessary losses. Rather, their existence is for the purpose of driving the developmental agenda. The dual mandate of the state-owned enterprises is to achieve a balance between the required level of self-funding and undertaking developmental projects that the private sector would ordinarily not. Chairperson, so when the leader of the DA said ahead of the 2018 budget speech that, I quote, "We must stabilize public finance by announcing a package of austerity measures and a comprehensive spending review. We must reform state-owned enterprises by privatizing or part privatizing ESCOM, close quote." We know where he is coming from ideologically. Chairperson, we also know that DA policies are underpinned by the classical liberal philosophy. Classical liberalism, Chairperson, is a political philosophy and ideology in which primary emphasis is placed on securing the freedom of the individual by limiting the power of the state. Chairperson, liberals have historically promulgated a belief that the market could deliver the greatest good to the greatest number of people, and the conviction that states should interfere as little as possible in the lives of individuals. Chairperson, however, a quick look at the historical roots of all the pioneering technologies of the past centuries points to decisive leadership by the state sector. In the developed countries, Chairperson, North America, Europe, for instance, state-owned enterprises and public investments have led the innovation, research, and development that have facilitated the establishment of most of the well-known global brands. Chairperson, Apple is a perfect example that supports my argument. Every technology, Chair, that gives the iPhone its smartphone capabilities owes its vision and funding to the state. Technologies I'm talking about include the internet, the GPS, touchscreen displays, and even the voice-activated smartphone assistant Siri. Chairperson, the 9th biggest auto manufacturer by volume globally is the French company Renault. That very few of us know is a state-owned enterprise. The company was, am I protected, Chairperson?
Order.
This lady will have a time to take to the podium. Thank you very much. The company was expropriated without compensation by the government of Charles de Gaulle from the suspected Nazi-aligned Renault family in 1945. Chairperson, in developing countries, we are fed propaganda that state-owned enterprises are by their nature undesirable assets that the state should sell off to the private sector. Chair, even students in our public universities and business schools swallow this neoliberal mantra uncritically. Chairperson, it is time that we educate our society that in fact, 10th largest bank in the world, with total assets worth over 2 trillion US dollars, is the Post Bank of Japan. Chairperson, 4 of the top, am I protected, Chair?
Honorable Member Shafo, your proximity, you see the problem is your proximity. As you heckle, I'm worried about your proximity because now you interfere with the member's speech. Can you just allow her? You're on the speaker's list. You'll raise your views. Continue, Honorable Matema.
Chair, anyway, her heckles will not change the validity of what I'm saying. Chairperson, 4 of the top 5 banks globally are from the communist-governed People's Republic of China and are part owned by the state. Chinese oil and gas companies, all of them state-owned enterprises, have recently displaced their well-known North American and European counterparts and now top the list of the largest firms in the energy sector on the globe.
On what point are you raising on?
Honorable Chair, I would like to know if the Honorable Mateme would take a question.
Honorable Matema, are you prepared to take a question?
I am not.
She's not prepared.
Chairperson, it is time that we educate our society that in fact, the 10th largest bank in the world, with total assets worth over 2 trillion US dollars, is the Post Bank of Japan. 4 of the top 5 banks chaired globally are from the communist governed People's Republic of China and are part owned by the state. Chinese oil and gas companies, all of them state-owned enterprises, have recently displaced their well-known North American and European counterparts and now top the list of the largest firms in the energy sector on the globe. Chairperson, many South Africans have accepted a myth as a fact, mainly that state-owned enterprises are always associated with crisis and failure and can only rely on state bailouts to survive. However, Chair, evidence here at home and abroad shows that with a bold vision driven by capable and ethical leadership, state-owned enterprises are able to be viable commercial businesses that are global leaders in their fields. Chairperson, in fact, the proliferation of the state-owned enterprises under apartheid was part of the agenda of the regime to promote economic development, which was aimed at promotion of the industrialization strategy premised on the export economy and import substitution. Chairperson, within this strategy was the notion of economic self-sufficiency. The state-owned enterprise sector was effectively used by the apartheid regime to empower Afrikaner enterprises in mining, agriculture, finance, manufacturing, and commerce. Almost 55% of the over 500 state-owned enterprises we have in South Africa today were established after 1997 in all spheres of government. Chairperson, in conclusion, as the African National Congress, we are aware of the greater agency to infuse common strategic purpose among all these entities. We welcome the decisive intervention of President Ramaphosa in ensuring that state-owned enterprises develop a comprehensive strategy that spells out clear, decisive turnaround strategies and interventions. Chairperson.
I remember your time has expired.
I'm concluding. Former President, I'm concluding, Chair. Our former President said, it always seems.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister Nene, can you continue the debate?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, delegates of our Deputy Minister of Finance and delegates of the National Council of Provinces, distinguished guests. Let me start by reiterating the point that is made by the Honorable Member, Mateme, that state-owned companies play a critical role in the development of social and economic infrastructure, and therefore they give practical effect to our national development plan of the country. In recent years, their ability to perform this critical function has been hampered by what has become known as state capture, which in simple English would be referred to as fraud and corruption. So today's debate is opportune because of the various government initiatives currently underway that are aimed at rebuilding the capacity of state-owned companies to live up to their mandates. But in the rebuilding of state-owned companies, there is a great risk that we will lean more towards measures that focus on individuals rather than institutions. We do, Honorable Chairperson, run the risk of focusing more on heroes and their heroic deeds. As Jean Monnet, one of the architects of the European unity warns of this trap. He once wrote, and I quote him, "Nothing is possible without men, as in human beings, but nothing lasts without institutions." Close quote. Given the dire situation in which some of these state-owned companies are in, we do need capable and morally upright women and men that we can parachute into these state-owned companies to stabilize them. But we should not search for heroes that we can just drop behind enemy lines without applying our minds to the institutional frameworks that will help secure the long-term future of these state-owned companies. In this regard, Chairperson and honorable members, we've done a lot of preparatory work, drawing in large part from the recommendations of the Presidential Review Committee on State-Owned Companies. The committee concluded that the key challenges that led to the poor performance of our state-owned companies included, among other things, 1, policy and mandate misalignments, 2, inefficient operations and failure to keep pace with changes in the industry. Detail. The first is the private sector participation framework. This framework was approved by government in 2016, which provides for alternative financing strategies to enable infrastructure investment and highlights considerations for the state-owned companies to partner with private sector companies in order to enable faster, more efficient delivery of goods, services, and economic infrastructure to support the country's higher economic growth aspirations and economic transformation goals. The PSP framework is therefore aimed at accelerating the delivery of infrastructure projects that are key for enabling economic growth through leveraged financing with the private sector. The PSP framework proposes the key principles for determining where PSP projects should be undertaken. And these are, 1, the possible PSP structures that could be employed depending on the nature of the infrastructure project, and secondly, a governance framework for government to oversee the implementation of the public sector participations. The proposed PSP projects must be a byproduct of the filtering process based on sector performance and market structure analysis, with a key focus on economic development. Key principles of the framework include considerations that the PSP project is feasible and demonstrates that it will yield socio-economic benefits for the country, and that the project delivers value for money versus the equivalent public sector comparator, and that they are financially viable, and that there is appropriate risk allocation between the parties. Now, in crafting the PSP framework, consultations were held with key departments which were the Department of Economic Development, Public Enterprise, Transport, Energy, Water and Sanitation, and Telecommunication and Postal Services, and their comments were integrated into the framework. Now, currently, all SOCs are required to give effect to the implementation of the PSP framework in their respective corporate plans. Government is currently working towards the following objectives to give effect to this framework. The first is that higher levels of investment in economic infrastructure in both public and the private sectors for South Africa to achieve its economic growth rate aspirations of 5% as outlined in our National Development Plan. And also to enable state-owned companies to be key players in the delivery of this economic infrastructure, requiring them to strengthen their financial position in an in-house capacity to package and procure and deliver on projects. It is also required to crowd in the private sector while accelerating investment in the form of funding, as well as realizing other benefits such as a greater innovation, efficiency, and expertise. Second, I said, Chairperson, Honorable Chair, is the costing of developmental mandates. Government is also committed to a mechanism aimed at costing the SOC's developmental mandates more explicitly, with the financial implications to be set out more clearly in shareholder compacts. The proposed mechanism includes one, identifying existing or future developmental activities, and secondly, quantifying the net cost of the activity using a corporate finance approach to measure the net present value to quantify the value add. This can be done per activity undertaken by the particular state-owned company. Once costs have been quantified, a funding mechanism then needs to be decided upon. State-owned companies contribute to the development of the country both through their commercial and non-commercial or developmental activities. Many poorly performing SOCs claim that non-commercial or developmental activities have contributed to their poor financial performance. In this regard, Chairperson and honorable members, it has become important that the costs associated with developmental activities be clearly specified and that it generates external benefits whilst not compromising the financial sustainability of the entity. State-owned companies are required to identify activities, quantify the net cost of the activity, and calculate the net present value using a specified rate of return. Where activities have a negative net present value and they are strategic and developmental, fiscal support may be considered. Our critical objectives include, among others, the following: reviewing the commercial models of certain SOCs, developing a national strategy to strategically reposition and sustain them. Thirdly, centralizing procurement by SOCs with a view to achieving economies of scale. The fourth is strengthening the current public accounting and oversight role of government in relation to state-owned companies. And the fifth is the realization of transformation targets in relation to skills development and economic empowerment with clear timelines. And the sixth is strengthening the governance relationship between government and state-owned companies. And the last but not least is differentiating state-owned company sectors, which are water, agriculture, transport, and so forth. The commercial and developmental mandates of state-owned companies is also being aligned to government objectives and being strengthened with a view to ensuring that services are delivered cost-effectively and taking market conditions into considerations. The last one is the framework for the appointment of members for the boards of state-owned companies and their remuneration of the executives. Under the guidance of the Minister of Public Service and Administration, the framework for the appointment of members of the SOC boards and the SOC executives have been developed, which comprises the following key elements: review the requirements of minimum qualifications for potential candidates, reviewing the methodology for processing board appointments to the cabinet, and reviewing the number of boards a board member may serve at any given time, especially in view of the importance of growing the knowledge base and enhancing transformation. The fourth is the appointment of executive authorities to strategic boards, and then developing guidelines regarding the level of security clearances of board appointees. It is also important that the framework for the appointment of members to the boards of SOCs and the remuneration of SOC executives should be aligned to the remunerations framework, both guaranteed packages and short-term incentives for the boards and executive management, in order to standardize the determination of compensation and also close the huge gaps between compensation of boards and executive management of the different state-owned companies. In conclusion, Chairperson and honorable members, successful implementation of these measures require close coordination within government and effective collaboration with the private sector. In addition, the inquiry into state capture will be closely monitored, and any recommendations aimed at addressing governance-related challenges, strengthening the financial position of state-owned companies, and improving service delivery to the public through optimal procurement practices will be considered favorably by government. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister Nene. Honorable Chabangu, Honorable Julius, I won't say what you are doing, but refrain. Honorable Chabangu and Honorable Julius. No. You know what you're doing. You're on your feet. Okay. Honorable Isaac.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Minister, members of the House, and of course my fellow South Africans. More than 2 decades have passed by since democracy was achieved in our beautiful South Africa. Back in 1994, the majority of South Africans had depended on a government which today, without doubt, absolutely without doubt, has become a monumental failure. And I'll tell you why. Yes, of course, I'm referring to the government of the ANC. There has been a systematic management, a total systematic mismanagement of our SOEs by the political elite, where corporate governance and developmental value of our SOEs have now been grossly eroded. Both your comrades, Malusi Gigaba and Lynn Brown's tenure as ministers of SOEs can only be described as pathetically disastrous. My fellow South Africans, it is imperative that we understand SOEs in this country have not been performing well, and it simply boils down to the fact about how they are governed. The quality of ministers that remain liable to appoint SOEs and boards of SOEs and perform oversight roles, these in the past have been poor, and I don't think anybody can dispute that with us. Surely then, with the poor quality of ministers that are overseeing the appointment of these boards, will realize that these SOEs will totally underperform. We must recognize, and fortunately, if I might just recall, Honorable Mateme has agreed with me on that point in her opening remarks. We must recognize that the failing of these institutions, Chairperson, has had a huge negative impact on critical public services, such as the state of health departments, housing, and of course education nationally across all 9 provinces. Now, the Democratic Alliance has for many years pointed out this government's lack of having no grasp whatsoever for the developmental imperatives of these vital institutions. And of course, the track record speaks for itself. Our fiscal prudence has had a rippling effect, with jobs being shed across all industries to nearly some 10 million South Africans now currently being unemployed. The negative growth in our GDP, Honorable Minister, is resulting in even further shortfalls in revenue income, now resulting in even further looming downgrades in South Africa's financial ratings. And as you and I both know, Honorable Minister, the midterm budget statement that's now laying ahead of us in the next 2-3 months' time is a very difficult act for you to follow, and I respect that. You've inherited the situation. The spiraling cost in fuel, VAT hikes, and the unions that continue to hold our SOEs to ransom are still inhibiting factors to our country's economy. Honorable Makue, you will realize that the SOEs are holding us to account. Through you, Honorable Chairperson. Chairperson, the hijacking of our SOEs by Trillium and Regiment, together with the various Gupta-linked companies, has had a huge impact on SARS. Of course, the Hlaudi Mutsenengs, the Brian Molefes, the Tom Moyanes, and of course the Ben Ngubanes will all go down in history, Chairperson, will all go down in history as having ransacked our country. Reversing the rot, Honorable Minister, I respect, will take decades. We need to move with speed in closing these loopholes in public procurement, holding corrupt public servants to account, and now appointing suitably qualified and experienced individuals, rather than the unqualified, politically connected individuals. I'm sure you're with me on that one, Chairperson. Creditors cannot be paid, and yet it remains ironic that CEOs and board members of today are now looking to make new political friends. Some of you who have jumped ship now to obviously protect yourselves in 2019, you know where I'm coming from. The looting of pension funds, continuous government bailouts, and politically motivated business decisions. Politically motivated business decisions must stop. The lifestyle audits must be made public. The time has come to pinpoint the looters and cut out the nice diplomatic talks. Let's get down to the crux of the matter. We must seriously move towards privatizing certain SOEs. We must begin to restore confidence. Chairperson, this will then create the much needed jobs, the much needed revenue income this country so much deserves, as well as then promoting a sense of security and the eradication of poverty of this beautiful nation. In conclusion, Chairperson, I've done pretty well time-wise, as you can see. As the Democratic Alliance, we will not, and I ask you to digest this for immediate reference, as the Democratic Alliance, we will not allow this government to continue holding this country to ransom by refusing to consider part privatization of certain entities such as Eskom and SAA. My fellow South Africans, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prince. Honorable Prince, can you continue with the debate?
Honorable Deputy Chair, Honorable Minister of Finance, Honorable Deputy Minister of Finance, Honorable members, special delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as we meet here today, our largest state-owned company, Eskom, is in a stalemate with the trade unions that represent over 30,000 of its workers. The National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, Solidarity, and NUMSA, the unions are refusing to sign a wage agreement unless the companies gives them insurance that their members who committed alleged acts of misconduct during the strikes will not be disciplined. The company thus far has refused to accede to this demand,
We call on the parties to do their best to find one another. Eskom, which has struggled financially for years, had been paying millions of rand in bonuses even to its disgraced executive managers. Eskom's annual report revealed that the company's managers pocketed handsome performance bonuses in spite of the fact that the company was making losses and sinking deep in debt. The senior management cohort also grew over the past 10 years from 80 to 600. Deputy Chair, I am drawing this historical context to make the point to this House that the current state of many of our SOCs did not come about as an incident. There was over many years unrestrained feasting of our resources by top executives in most of these companies, while the boards and shareholders either look the other way or we complicit of these shenanigans. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, the narrative about state-owned companies in South Africa is generally negative. When we read in the papers about the finances of SAA and Eskom, the phased state bailouts pop-ups, our SOCs are seen by our people as a drain on the fiscus. Deputy Chair, as the ANC believes it is important to keep an informed perspective on these companies. For example, the percentage of households with access to electricity in our country is nearly 90%. Thanks to the ANC government's policies and work done by Eskom. If Eskom were privately owned, we would not have come even close to this target. The 6 SOCs in the portfolio of public enterprises collect annually revenues of over 280 billion, employ more than 120,000 workers in relatively well-paying jobs, and have exits worth 1.1 trillion rand. The SOCs are responsible for enabling the growth and development of the South African economy as they are structured to provide reliable electricity, transport and handling of goods, mining and diamonds, forestry and timber processing, manufacture of defense technology and aviation. However, these companies have also been vulnerable to interference by unscrupulous internal parties with criminal intent, such as those who are the subject of investigation by several state bodies. Honorable Deputy Chair and members, as the ANC, we are proud and we know that all patriotic South Africans applaud the leadership provided by the Minister of Public Enterprises and the team at his department, and as well as the boards and honest managers and staff who have blown the cover of these delinquents who had infested our system undetected for such a long time. We have witnessed practical measures being taken in RIT or SOCs of the corrupt individuals and the exposure of the private firms, particularly those in the auditing discipline, that have enabled the siphoning of public resources. In less than 6 months, the new board and management at Eskom has ensured that 10 senior executives implicated in corruption have been dismissed. 11 criminal cases have been opened, 5 of which involve 9 senior executives. A total of 1,049 outstanding disciplinary cases have been initiated since April 2018, of which 628 have been finalized resulting in 75 dismissals. 7 out of 25 staff members doing business with Eskom have been dismissed so far, and lifestyle audits of senior managements are in progress. All irregular supplier contracts have been investigated, and 902 million has been recovered from McKinsey, the most prominent of the lot. Deputy Chair, in these few months, we have witnessed an improvement in liquidity and more positive investor sentiment. Investors have begun once again to buy Eskom bonds, including one valued at $1.5 billion US. However, there are still concerns about the debt, which are ballooned in the past 10 years from 40 billion to 355 billion, while electricity sales have dropped. Investors have also expressed concerns about municipal debt and the cost structure of company. Similarly, remarkable progress has been made at Transnet to return to the financial health, good governance and accountability by those appointed to positions of responsibility. These include a new board and acting CFO were appointed in May 2018, and the department has observed must improve oversight on contract management and deviations, as well as adjudication, procurement contracts. Forensic investigations have been instituted, including into the 1,064 locomotives. Criminal charges and forensic investigations have been opened with the police, SIU, and Hawks, and the review of procurement processes and strengthening of both internal and external audit functions is underway. The department is taking similar actions to bring the smaller entities, Denel, Alexcor, and Safcol, into a path of sustainability through strong oversight and regulations. I was indeed pleased, Honorable Deputy Chair, during our recent oversight as a committee at Transnet at Kuduspoort, when we were told that Botswana and Ghana have made orders of our luxury train coaches. It would appear to me that our African sisters countries are looking up to us to take up these opportunities offered by their markets because of our infrastructure and the capability and our capacity and capabilities of state-owned companies have so far demonstrated, but we seem too shy to aggressively absorb these opportunities. We are excited by the work the department is doing to help the South African Express airline growth its wings to fly again. The airline was grounded by the South African Civil Aviation Authority early this year. The suspension of the air operator certificate was lifted in 26 June 2018, with only 2 aircraft allowed to operate. South Africa Express is finalizing the flight's schedule, and we will hope the new board made up of South African with integrity and experience in aviation. We will do our utmost best to turn around the airline and address its shortcomings. As the ANC, we salute these outstanding patriots, some of whom have volunteered their services free of charge in the spirit of Tumamina. Our president has implored all of us to embrace. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Ngoya.
Honorable Deputy Chair, honorable fighters,
fellow South Africans. State-owned entities, Chairperson, if managed properly with the necessary support and vision, can help transform our country and our economy. They are central to the development of any state, especially states that have not yet industrialized. Throughout modern history, SOEs have formed the backbone of economies from developing to the developed world. China, the greatest economic miracle of the last 30 years, saw its economic transformation to one of the most industrialized and sophisticated economies in the world because of the role of the SOEs. In the mid-20th century, the British government nationalized many of the strategic industries in the country, turning them into SOEs, because it saw that benefit the state owning and managing the industries would have to an economy that had just seen its industrial power destroyed after 6 years of war, and which needed to be rebuilt. Strong, capable SOEs with a clear developmental vision are able to find the delicate balance between growing the economy, developing the forces of production, and improving the living standards of the people. Chairperson, that is why as the EFF, we are unashamed in our position that the strategic sectors of the economy should be nationalized. An SOE is not limited by the immediate need to create profit, which its shareholders demand, but is also driven by the needs of the government and the people of the country. SOEs allow for strategic development and long-term planning, in comparison to private companies who only chase after short-term profits. Unfortunately for South Africans, the last 9 years have seen our SOEs become the center of state capture, as the Zuptas used SOE contracts, which they were illegally given, to enrich themselves and certain individuals within the ruling party. When Zuma left office, many expected to see a change in how SOEs were managed. But instead, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, the new Minister of Public Enterprises, has embarked on a reign of terror at the SOEs. The minister is using his power to fight political battles, but also battles on behalf of various factions of capital which want to get their hands on SOE tenders, as the Guptas once did. Various individuals at SOEs have come to the EFF complaining that Mr. Pravin is a law unto himself, doing as he pleases without any regard for legislation or due process. He bullies board members, threatening them with removal and other forms of intimidation if they do not do his bidding. He accuses board members who disagree with him of being involved in corruption and state capture. He engages in racism and other forms of discrimination. He gives unlawful instructions to board members and executives in...
Honorable Goying.
Yes, sir.
Honorable Mutara, on what point are you raising?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the member at the podium is casting aspersions on a member of Parliament, number one. Number two, she's also using very derogatory terms on the character of the minister.
Honorable members, there is a point of order raised. And I would just quickly refer to the earlier ruling that I made. Point 4, which I made, and I would read it. Every member in this House has the right to hold his or her own views and the right to express those views in this chamber. So can we just continue with the debate, Honourable Member? Can we continue?
Thank you, Chair. To justify his actions, he says he's fighting state capture and cleaning up the SOEs. If we want SOEs that contribute to the economic development of our country, we need sound leadership that has no ulterior political or economic agenda. The manner in which the minister has appointed the new boards of the SOEs has been random, with no clear or transparent process followed. We simply wake up to a new board the same way we did during the Zuma years.
The same is true for how Minister Gordhan has gotten rid of board members. No due course is followed, and board members are simply dismissed. If we want to address the legacy of state capture, we need to do so in a fair and honest way, with clear justification as to why certain actions are taken. That is good governance. We cannot allow Mr. Pravin Gordhan to replace one form of bad governance with another, as it will lead to the collapse of the SOEs that can play such a crucial role in the development of our country. If he continues on this path, Mr. Pravin will only add fuel to those both within the ruling party and the DA advocating for the breaking up of the SOEs and their privatization, which will only serve the interest of capital. And then we may find ourselves in a situation where we have the land, but the SOEs are in private hands. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Scalfa, can you continue with the debate?
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Minister, Honourable members of the NCOP, good afternoon. The National Department of Public Enterprises highlights not only the pinnacle of national government's outright failures in governance, but also in its flawed policy framework, which has done nothing but pillage key public service sectors, rendering them completely ineffective. Indeed, the ruling party sees the South African fiscus as nothing more than a cash cow for its corrupt elite, with the consolidation of our country's state-owned enterprises acting as the ruling party's milking machine for state funds. In fact, it is through this very department that state capture was refined and perfected by the ANC over almost 9 years of corrupt rule under former President Jacob Zuma. We know that the ANC continues to cling to its state-owned enterprises, even though it has shown little evidence to run them, in the hopes that more connected politicians will cash in on billions of rands in bailouts footed by the South African taxpayer. Chairperson, we should not even be debating governance in South Africa's state-owned enterprises, as this department, in my opinion, should frankly not exist in its present form. By holding key public service enterprises hostage, national government believes that it is creating employment for the South African public. Yet, I continue to remind them that it's not government's responsibility to create jobs for the public, but that government instead creates a conducive environment for the South African economy to grow. The consolidation of our public enterprises does nothing but paralyze economic growth, while the financial mismanagement and plundering of our public entities enrich those highest in the ruling party. Surely our rising unemployment rate alone, Honourable Chairperson, should signal that the ANC policies simply do not work. State-owned enterprises should be privatized or part privatized to create a competitive environment which gives South African consumers a variety of choice when it comes to the services they deserve, while simultaneously stimulating economic opportunity for the people of South Africa. Eskom, for example, supplies 95% of electricity to the South African public, largely through coal-burning power stations. When the coal supply is monopolized by opportunists such as the Guptas, and when government is responsible for wage disputes among Eskom employees, the unions continue to shackle our entire country through strike action, plunging our state into darkness and flatlining our economy. The unions surely cannot be allowed to stronghold our government in this manner. The privatization of public enterprises will mean that unions are disarmed and our economy is released. But it does mean much more. It creates a platform for coal-burning power supply to be rivaled by clean, green alternatives, which tie in directly with our allegiance to the Paris Climate Accord. This is the progress our country should be making. Instead, state-owned enterprises are at the mercy of horrid financial mismanagement and corruption, which burns at the heart of South Africa's fiscus and ability to deliver to our poor. In the Western Cape, this is evident in the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, which Transport Minister, Minister Blade Nzimande himself described as an ATM for the people. This state-owned enterprise, which provides a crucial service to approximately 1 million people per day in the Western Cape, has been looted beyond repair. Auditor General Kimi Makwetu revealed last month that PRASA's senior executives failed to disclose contracts scored with their business partners to the tune of 87 million rand, with nothing to show for these transactions. All while thousands of rail passengers are left stranded in the city of Cape Town on a daily basis, and trains which do not run are ravaged by criminals. The knock-on effect of this corruption and negligence is a dip in economic activity which dissuades potential investors and kills much-needed jobs. The Western Cape economy is held ransom by PRASA alone, which fails to deliver this essential transportation service to the people who so desperately need it in our province. Were it not for the City of Cape Town, Honourable Chairperson, and its attractiveness for business and tourism, ailing state-owned enterprise South African Airways would also be out of business. As our national carrier edges on bankruptcy, the Cape Town-Johannesburg route has just been listed at the 9th busiest in the world and is one of the only regular flights keeping the airline afloat domestically. Under the leadership of Zumalink Dudu Myeni, South African Airways was slowly milked dry while ailing in its service potential. Once the finest airline in Africa, South African Airways is slowly being overtaken by Ethiopian Airways, Angolan Airways, and Kenyan Airways, the national carriers of African economies, which continue to surpass our own country in economic growth and job creation. The National Department of Public Enterprises, quite frankly, is making a mockery of South Africa's economy in the face of a continental upswing from capable governments elsewhere in Africa. To date, SAA has received tens of billions of rands in bailouts, which have done little to return the carrier around. How many schools could have been built with that money? How much land could have been bought and redistributed with that money? How many ARVs could have been supplied to the people to keep them healthy and alive? This is the true cost of failing state-owned enterprises, people which are forced to cough up for services it never receives. Where is the money? In the pockets of the ANC elite, none of whom have faced any arrest or prosecution. It is tragic what state-owned enterprises have done to this country and the economy of South Africa and ultimately the people of this country. Honourable Chairperson, we should not be having this debate because the National Department of Public Enterprises should not exist. Privatize Eskom, SAA, PRASA, Denel, and the like to open up the economy and free government's hands to deliver services where they really matter. Allow the private sector to provide excellent service at competitive rates to the people who need them. The national custody of state-owned enterprises merely serves as an example of the dangers of greater nationalization of the state. The financial state of these merely point and red flag what exactly will happen to land, healthcare, and the Reserve Bank that national government also seeks to control. In countries such as Zimbabwe and Venezuela, where the state has monopolized almost every asset, the people are left totally destitute. The national currency has failed and the economy has ultimately collapsed. The management of our public enterprises is but a microcosm of what would happen to our country should the ANC policy gain further ground. We just cannot sustain this type of governance any longer, despite credible ministers such as Minister Nene and Minister Gordhan. In the future of South Africa lies in the vitality of our economy. We must create a conducive environment which nurtures it. This includes allowing enterprises to function independently of the state and using the market of supply and demand to regulate a level of excellence in service delivery for all our people. National government under the ANC has proven that publicly owned enterprises have dismally failed. So why do we continue to pump money into them? Perhaps the answer lies in the many enriched ANC politicians who continue to lobby for this department's retention. Honourable Chairperson, South Africa SEOs will never recover, and it will be a matter of time when South Africa will have no other option but to look for private partners to bail them out of their black holes. So until this department and its entities are investigated and let loose to form part of an independent economy, it will continue to be at the mercy of greedy political opportunists. I thank you.
Ilunga lehloniphekile lalendlu yomkhandlu wetifundza umhlonishwa Khawula.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, the state-owned enterprises in South Africa have continued to be plagued by usual challenges of corruption, maladministration, poor services, erosion of the rule of law in governance, bailouts, and so on and so forth. Whilst the primary objectives of the establishment of the SOEs may have been, amongst others, economic spin-offs and benefits to the country associated with their existence, the opposite is true, that these have rather become a burden to the state. If these were not a burden to the country, the NCOP would not be having this debate today. At last, the ANC has finally conceded that it has run down the country on the SOEs. Some of the reasons associated with the poor state of affairs in our SOEs are lack of consequence management to wrongdoers by government. People get deployed, steal the finances, and get redeployed to go and steal elsewhere. Poor cadre deployment of comrades who hardly qualify for the jobs at hand. Factionalism, which results in the scramble for resources and power. The Guptarization of South Africa, which has collapsed the rule of law in governance. Exorbitant salaries determined by the executives and paid by the executives to themselves. This is coupled with the bloated administrative structures of our SOEs, especially at top levels. In the case of these maladministrative practices, the boards are merely rubber stampers of what the executives determine. If the country wants to bring back focus and good practices in our SOEs, it is important that the SOEs must operate in accordance with business ethics and business principles. The SOEs need a back to basics of business principles. In fact, some of the SOEs, like the SAA, have become so much of a disservice to government and the citizens of our country, such that they have become a disaster waiting to happen. A recent scope oversight visit to SAA has found that the technical operations of SAA are in an appalling state. Plain new engine parts at SAA get stripped off and sold to the black market and are replaced by old or outdated ones. In the records, the plane will be documented as having new parts, whereas those were sold to other airlines by employees who pocket those millions for themselves. SAA is soon heading for causing a major disaster in this country. This must be stopped, Minister. Honorable Ngwenya, corruption at Transnet and other SOEs is so institutionalized that the culprits are resolved to want to go to court in order to defend corruption. Where in the world have you ever heard of SOEs who want to do corruption by force? This is all because of the absence of consequence management in our country. This is all because of lack of the rule of law in our country. The country has wrong role models. Those who govern pocket resources for themselves and go on to be defended by parliament. Those who govern pocket state resources for themselves, when they get charged in courts, they go on to demand that government must hire expensive advocates for their defense, and they are granted this privilege. Honorable Chairperson, governance in South Africa and the rule of law are taken too much for granted. These malpractices must be stopped in order to give the country and government some dignity and respect. One was hoping that under the new President Ramanyusa administration, things were going to get back to normal. Progress is very slow. Action is very slow. The hopes are beginning to fade slowly away. We need action, and quick action, Mr. Minister. Thank you.
Honorable Kayla. Honorable Kayla.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister. The state-owned enterprises are meant and designed in order to contribute to the economic growth and facilitate integrated sustainable development. However, this is not the case for South African Airways, Eskom, and others. They are rather a burden to the public purse and are wasting public money as they serve as dumping grounds for ruling party caterers. The government's response is always to throw more money at these SOEs rather than trying to understand the causes of their problem. It is also disturbing to note how many SOEs executives refuse to make themselves accountable to Parliament. When it comes to broader economic policy, government must always be guided by long-term sustainable development goals. The gradual, carefully worked out approach of the National Development Plan seems to have been forgotten and replaced by so-called radical economic transformation, which is not the government policies. It looks very much like the ruling party has run out of ideas and is using other parties' policies without clear plans. SOE boards must be independent and qualified. They should not be deployed by political parties, party leaders, but should rather be appointed on basis of merit and competency. Corporate governance must be part of SOE's DNA, including through the application of internal controls, risk management systems. This means ensuring that principles of transparency, accountability, and ethics are widely respected and upheld. A state-owned enterprise must further encompass issues of gender and social inclusion. For example, setting the standards for women's representation in boards and top management. They must be structured and positioned in such that they are more responsive to the challenges that demands of local communities. These communities must not only be in urban areas, as it is the case now, but must integrate and unlock potential rural areas. We need to see these government companies in having an impact in villages, contributing to the development needs and changing lives for the betterment of our people. I thank you.
Thank you. Lilunga lehloniphekile lalendlu wemkhandlu wetifundza umhlonishwa Julius.
House Chairperson, ministers, members, and South Africans at large, I think this debate needs a question and an answer. Who appointed these leaders at SOEs? None other than the ANC. It's your ministers that appointed them. Now today we are seeing there are two sides of the ANC. It's now trying to correct your own mistakes and you say, no, those ones are not ANC. We are now the real ANC. It's the same corrupt ANC that brought these SOEs to its knees. It's the same ANC that allowed the politicians, allowed these to steal our money from SOEs. And that is a fact. We cannot hide from it. Honorable Matema, I thought that you brought the motion today. I thought that through you, House Chair, I thought that you will mention it here, that there's a problem at SOEs and it's brought by the ANC. You brought it here and you spoke nothing about it. I'm actually disappointed with you. Honorable Isaac, yes, the former Public Enterprises Minister, Gigaba and Brown oversaw these poor appointments. Brian Molefe was appointed by Minister Gigaba, who was even redeployed to Parliament. That's how the ANC thinks. You steal money, then you come to Parliament, we'll give you more opportunities to steal. These ministers appointed Ben Ngobane and very other individuals linked to the Gupta family. Some are still ministers in President Ramaphosa's administration as we speak. Do you really expect us to applaud you? I don't think so. House Chairperson, what I didn't hear today from the ANC, from Minister Nene, and never heard it from President Ramaphosa and even Minister Gordhan is telling South Africans that we are sorry. You never apologize to South Africans. In fact, the ANC defended these appointments when the DA brought these issues to the attention of the public. The ANC defended Zuma for years when the DA fought to get his day in court for the arms deal. President Ramaphosa is even today still paying for Zuma's legal fees. He uses our money to defend someone that stole our money. It doesn't make sense to me. Now, Honorable Prince, you know, why are these ANC politicians not also subjected to lifestyle audits? You say senior leaders or CEOs at SOEs are subjected. Yes, it's a step in the right direction. But who appointed them? These guys are also thieves. They must also be subjected to lifestyle audits. You also mentioned Transnet and the locomotives. That's so good. They're doing a wonderful job. Now, why did we buy locomotives from other countries? If we can do it here, it is to steal. It was a plan to steal. Even raise it to more than over 9 billion rand of our money. Shame on the ANC. You failed us. You brought us in this situation. You cannot be applauded for this. I'm sorry. Now, Chairperson, Honorable Mateme and Minister Nene, I agree with you that part of the state-owned entities, the role is to create jobs. But did we create jobs? Today we see more than half of our youth are unemployed in this country. How can you say that this is the role of SOEs? Did you do it? People are not stupid out there. They know who brought this unemployment to you, and it is the ANC who opted to enrich themselves, stole from the poor, and today you want to come and stand here and say, we are trying to sort it out. You can't sort out your own mess and expect us to applaud you. I'm sorry. President Ramaphosa and his role in SOE's House Chair cannot be ignored in this discussion. He is not new to SOEs as the ANC today wants to portray. While he was Deputy President, he was tasked to oversee the turnaround of SOEs. He was there when the Gupta, Zuma, and others looted the people's money and failed to create jobs. He kept quiet. Do you really expect us to applaud you? Now, Chairperson, you know what is worse is that no one in the ANC, nor President Ramaphosa, any minister, are willing to apologize to South Africans. You know, South Africans cannot applaud you for poor attempts to clean up the mess that you created. You say now there's a process underway. That process will send no one to jail. You have a clear mandate. Why don't you go to the police and charge Zuma, charge the Guptas, so that they can go to jail immediately?
Honorable
Chairperson.
Julius, sorry. Honorable Makue.
Chairperson, our rules are quite clear that we should not cast aspersions, but also
Order, members.
The rules are quite clear that we must not prejudge what is before a judge. And this gentleman has just done that, Chair. And I ask him to withdraw that section of his speech, please, Chair.
Honorable members, let's allow the debate to go on. Conclude, Honorable Julius.
House Chair, make a call on President Ramaphosa and the ANC to apologize to South Africans for the rotten at SOEs and the lack to create jobs at these companies. Extend lifestyle audits to include these influential politicians, ANC politicians, that allowed these guys to steal our money. Chairperson, the ANC cannot and will never fully hold their comrades accountable. The only way is for South Africans to change government in 2019 by voting for a party that have a proven record of caring for the people, creating jobs where we govern, and stop nothing to root out corruption. This
Honorable
party is
Chair.
undoubtedly the DA. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Pakis.
Honorable
Order
Chair,
members, order members.
Honorable Minister and the Deputy Minister and honorable members of Parliament, NCOP, let me place my humble request, Chair, when I'm left with 3 minutes, please just question me. It's an honor to me to be part of this important debate, political debate in the House. Let me be hesitant to state that, and the fact that our revolution was never made of motley collection of Hollywood stars and never resembled a brittle process, but instead a combination of sacrifice and political commitment of individual cadres with political willpower to make a noble contribution in the liberation of humanity and establishment of democracy and freedom as a hallmark of development of our society. Embedded in this revolutionary struggle is a war against imperialist calamitous rule, which its effects are felt by the very poor masses of our country and tormented and exploited class in our society. The nature of monopoly capitalism is destructive, extractive, divisive, and corrupt in nature. Therefore, democratic breakthrough in 1994 brought about greater possibility of assuming political power by the ANC, which placed in practical terms that we carry responsibility of governing the country through exercise of political power. However, the reality that any process of exercise of power without monitoring and supervision leads to corruption. State power is a crucial determinant factor in the life of society, that if any basic changes were to take place in society, force will be needed to countervail against the status quo. The development of our country needs integration with strategic focus in our rural areas. Any looting of millions of resources by the masters of grand larceny with their voracious accumulation, its effects are felt by the poor masses in the deep rural areas and the villages behind the cold and freezing mountains, brows and hills in the Eastern Cape, KwaXili in Matatiele, and KZN. Without electricity and water, these are the very same poor people who will still be failed by the recalcitrant judiciary that will never prosecute looters of our public resources. Any country weakened, Honorable Minister, its enforcement agencies and institutions, criminals will score free without trial. It is true that in a class-divided society, there's no neutrality of judiciary. Judiciary can be independent, but no class neutrality exists. The revolution will never shrink in the face of the parasitic network of engorged leaders with their grisly scheme of corruption. We need virtuous leaders, Honorable Minister, I want to repeat this. We need virtuous leaders with integrity, sensitivity to the social needs of our people. We need in appearance and in deeds, political intensity, more proclivity that goes beyond rhetoric. We need judicious leadership, Honorable Minister. The current state of our parastatals need an extraordinary intervention. In the same context, flexibility and involvement of the National Treasury becomes so crucial to release resources precisely because the suffering of our people cannot be postponed for the next generation. As much as we are alive to the global economic trends The genuine black economic empowerment is the one that touches the lives and effect quality change in the living standard of the ordinary masses and the exploited class, thrusting their economic activity as opposed to elevation of the political elite. The material inequality in our country is terribly not acceptable. We say so as the ANC. Therefore, we will not feign satisfaction and normality when all measures fail to create egalitarian society. The rate of unemployment, more especially of young people, is a source of chronic social inequalities. We ought to be fastidious about the strategic orientation of state entities. Honorable Minister and the Deputy Minister, we ought to be fastidious about the strategic orientation of our entities. The activities of our parastatals must be scientifically evaluated on case by case within the framework and the basis of the gamut of pillars. One, Minister, what is the nature of economic contribution of each entity? Is revenue collection into the coffers of the country? What kind of jobs have been created? The nature of skills created, deepening research, science, and technological innovations. Anything without this framework in the context of our activities is useless. It must be collapsed. With the supreme intention, Honorable Minister and the Deputy Minister, the supreme intention to redeploy, I want to repeat that, redeploy resources to productive economic activities. Actually, I'm repeating what you have said yourself, Honorable Minister. We need to impose vetting to all board members serving in our state entities and regulate the salary bills of those CEOs and CFO before we could talk about encouraging ordinary workers to take voluntary packages. In our state departments, we have DDGs, DGs, chief directors, deputy directors, assistant directors who earn fabulous salaries, but you cannot even assess their performance and evaluate the value for money. This is where we need to cut. This is where we need to cut and must be subjected to annual security clearance, Honorable Minister and the Deputy Minister, and enforce vetting in our public service. The perforation that is glaring in our state entities is on governance. We have been saying that. And individuals have been charged, some dismissed, but the reality that exists is that we have descended to venality. And governance is a big issue that we need to deal and address in our state entities. Therefore, we need, with the current condition of our parastatals, institutional intelligence with ego strength. Let me explain that, which equals or meaning individual capacity to maintain his identity in the face of psychological pain, distress, turmoil, and conflict between external forces and the demand of reality. Let us remind those leaders in the
Honorable
same
Fakir,
institutions. 3 minutes.
Is the 3 minutes now?
Okay. But then, let me make this point. Let us remind those leaders who constitute the core of parasitic network enamored by money that our people are still reverberating in tormenting poverty, have no electricity, have no water, have no jobs, have no sanitation. We appreciate as the ANC, the good work of those individual workers and managers who are not synonymous with corruption and complicity, but remain immaculate with total commitment to serve our people. Dinel, Transnet, Petro, SA, SSA, Eskom, they make an valuable contribution in the lives of our people in our society. DA talks about privatizing Eskom. They are waiting for the ANC to take a decision. We are privatizing Eskom. In nowhere in the world where liberalization and capitalism has created jobs.
Honorable Pakis, Honorable Makwebu,
Chair,
why are you standing?
with due respect, he knows I respect him as the member of this house. But what he has just said now about Kamisile in Xhosa is very derogatory. No. It's a DA, they come here and then Bakamisile because they don't have a plan. Now, if you're saying somebody like that, that's very derogatory. He must withdraw, Chair. He must withdraw.
No,
Which
no.
Bakamisile? No, that's derogatory and
Honor-
demeaning. You
Honorable-
cannot say that.
Honorable-
You cannot say that.
No.
You
Honorable-
cannot say that. Bakamisile,
Honorable-
Askamsanga patata.
No.
Ah, no.
Keep quiet.
Yes, Xhosa is very
Honorable-
derogatory. I take offense.
Honorable
Asanga zokamisa.
Honorable Makwebu. Honorable
Chair,
Makwebu.
please rule.
Yeah, let me roll. Honorable Makwebu, allow me to make a ruling. I have listened to him attentively. Indeed, he has said Bakamisile. But for me to make an appropriate ruling, because my understanding is that he was referring to the public sector to get to the privatization of the entity, not to the DA. But be that as it may, we'll go through Hansard so that we see the correct context and make a proper ruling. Honorable Julius. Honorable Julius. Honorable Julius.
Yes, thank you. House Chairperson, whilst the point of order was raised by Honorable Makwebu and you made your ruling, still you allowed Honorable Pakis to stand and he's supposed to sit down.
Honorable Pakis, the point of order the point of order is sustained. You can, in future, if they are raising a point of order, take your seat.
Look, we need an inordinate political confidence of our leaders and decisive leadership to set and impose itself to difficult situations on behalf of the poor and exploited class, not against it, and yet make sure that capitalism must function within a strict imposed system. It is a recitation of the DA that we don't have responsibility as government to create jobs. We have been waiting for the private sector to create jobs in this society. But instead, workers get continuously losing their jobs in South Africa. The issue of lifestyle audit. It is the ANC president explicitly saying life audit will continue, will happen in our society. The last point, Chair. Pessimism is synonymous to liberalism. Now, the issue of SOEs, that our SOEs will never recover under the ANC government in our land, is just but a nonsense, a dark load of nonsense. It's pessimism at its highest order. And Chairperson, the issue of credit rating, DA members must go and study the political economy of the rating agencies in any world. Go and do yourself a favor. What is the history of credit rating agencies? They will never love the ANC government because it's a progressive government led by a national liberation movement, which is a revolutionary organization in South Africa.
Can you take your seat? Let me take Honorable Smith. You are still left with 50 seconds. Honorable Smith.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. My apology for my voice. Honorable Chair, House Chair, I just want some clarity because previously I used the word nonsense in this House and I was called out of order. The Honorable member on the podium used it twice. Is it now allowed or not? I just need clarity on that.
Order members. Honorable members, is the context. It's only the context that will make it in order and out of order. Conclude, Honorable Pakis.
My last point, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, water security and energy security cannot be traded in any way. Our sovereignty will never be traded with anything in the world whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Dr. Matime. Honorable Matime.
Honorable House Chair, I think if this evening, Chair, you were to end the session by running a test on the topic treated here, I think some of us were going to score very low. Yes, I think we're going to score very low. Chairperson, period under review. I have said the past 6 months, people go years behind, so on and so forth. However, Chairperson, I've realized that there is a lot of information here which honorable members must take to the Zondo Commission. Yes. Honorable Minister, you were on spot on by saying this time around, modus operandi is going to be fit for purpose. Fit for purpose. Whether financial or human resource or whatever, the fit for purpose. What is the SOEs are there to stimulate economic growth in this country. That's the mantra. Chairperson, I appreciate a lot from the speaker from the EFF, and I would still repeat that the negative practices observed should be taken to the Zondo Commission. That is why we have the Zondo Commission, because the people of this country have spoken, and we, African National Congress, as the leader of society, we have listened. Take matters to the Zondo Commission. He is waiting. Honorable Chair, it is...
Honorable members, sorry, Honorable Matime. Honorable members, heckling is allowed, but we can't do that in a way that will compromise the decorum of the House. The Honorable Speaker at the podium is protected.
Thank you.
Continue, Honorable Matime.
Thank you very, very much, Chair. As regards...
Honorable Matime, sorry, can you take your seat? Let me take Honorable Chabangu. Honorable Chabangu.
Thank you, Deputy Acting Chair. Can I, with due respect, ask the honorable member a question?
Make sure that before asking it, Honorable Matime, are you ready to take a question?
I'm not.
She's not ready, so take your seat.
Who's Zondo
Honorable Shabangu, take your seat. Honorable Shabangu, continue, Honorable Matime.
Chairperson, as regards the official opposition of the Republic, I deliberately reminded ourselves that our inductive SONA indicated this country needs a constructive opposition. Now, the other day, Honorable Norma French comes here and say to this August House, I can vilify the ruling party, I can call them names, I can do all sorts of negative things to them, but that's not going to improve the service to our people by an inch. Here comes now. That was constructive in my view. Here comes Honorable Schaefer, who has left the House before I could respond to what she said. One of the things she said, which I believe is constructive and I agree with her, is that the responsibility of government is to create a conducive atmosphere, and we are hard at work doing just that. Where I do not agree with her, Chairperson, that then we must privatize these SOEs. That we must privatize the SOEs, and then what's going to stimulate this economy. And Honorable Pakis correctly says, Honorable Chairperson, he says that there is no class neutrality in the judiciary. No class neutrality. And until society is given that gentle push by intervention by the state, the lives of our people are not going to improve. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Kaula. Honorable Kaula, this information he has about people selling parts of our planes, Zondo Commission. Chair, to Honorable Julius. To Honorable Julius, Chair, South Africans, Chair, I'm being drowned.
As you conclude, Honorable Matime.
Yes, definitely. To Honorable Julius, I just want to indicate that African National Congress, as the leader of society, is going to be applauded by the citizens of this country for listening and taking action. There is Zondo Commission. Go to the Zondo Commission if you've got issues. Honorable Bagis, I agree with you. I agree, Mr. Minister. Let's strengthen the vetting. Let us strengthen the vetting, because some people somehow get into our service and true colors then emerge. Now,
Honorable Mateme, I'm
in
afraid
conclusion,
your time has expired.
in conclusion, Chairperson, in conclusion, Chairperson, the transformation of SOEs is work in progress.
Honorable
Thank you.
Matime.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Order, members. Honorable members, two quick issues. Honorable Mokwele.
Chair.
Let me take this opportunity to thank the Minister and the Deputy and special delegates from our respective beautiful province, as this is the house that represents the interests of the provinces, to be with us today.
Chair,
Honorable Mokwele.
on a point of order, I want to tell the House that I've been given this. I don't think somebody's trying to bribe me somehow. I'm declaring it to the House that whoever who gave it to me, don't think you are bribing me somehow, but I appreciate. Thank you.
Honorable Mokwele, I'm even shocked as a presiding officer, because according to my records, all honorable members of NCOPs were given some weeks back. It means we have been not to work. But that concludes the business of the day. Honorable members, you are requested to remain standing until the procession has left the house. The house is adjourned.